Good morning. ele vai green, muito bom.
Recording in progress.
Read type. Good morning, honorable members.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. Now the system is pushing me to start earlier than anticipated. Let me, because it's how many minutes? It's 2 minutes to 9. Maybe in the meantime, I can be welcoming you and declare the meeting after 1 minute officially open. The meeting itself, it's a briefing by the Demarcation Board responding to the public, to the portfolio committee's public hearings on the IMDA bill, and I think issues that were raised with us wrongly that were supposed to be raised with the Demarcation Board. So let me welcome you. The indication was that I should be welcoming the Minister, Deputy Minister Tau, and DDG for Policy, Governance and Administration, who would be leading the delegation of the team. Let me welcome the Demarcation Board, led by the chairperson. They are also supposed to be members of the Demarcation Board. The chairperson will acknowledge them, and officials from Parliament and any other invited guests or people who have joined. The meeting is officially open. As already indicated, the agenda is responses to the Portfolio Committee's public hearings on the IMDA bill issues that were raised with us. So at the center would be the Demarcation Board making a presentation. Any apologies, Portfolio Committee Secretary?
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, everybody. Yes, we received an apology from Honorable Spieth that's still on sick leave. The Minister and Deputy Minister Tau apologized, saying that they will be leaving the meeting early. Then both DGs, they attending another meeting, and then also the Deputy Minister for Traditional Affairs is attending a meeting in the Eastern Cape. Thank you, Chairperson, and we do form a quorum in the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If the minister is around, then can open the meeting. Will be followed by the chairperson of the Demarcation Board. Minister? Just opening remarks. But if she's not there, then would move straight to the Demarcation Board, allow the chairperson to open and acknowledge some members who might be here, members of the board and the CEO, and immediately hand over to whoever is going to make the presentation. Mr. Manyon.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson, members of the Portfolio Committee present in this meeting. I've also heard, Chairperson, that the Minister, Deputy Minister also is supposed to be present in the meeting. And also senior officials from Cooperative. Let me acknowledge everybody who is participating in this meeting, my Chairperson, and members of the committee. First, Chairperson, let me appreciate this opportunity and say it is quite important for us to discuss the matters that have been raised during your engagement with the communities, because basically those matters are what will help us in improving in our engagements and also in our work. In other words, I'm trying to indicate to members of the committee that we appreciate this, and also we will try by all means to improve on matters where we need to improve, and also maybe to work differently on other matters. First, Chairperson, I would like to indicate that at the heart of the matters that have been raised by communities, it is the issue of lack of consultation, perceived or otherwise. You would realize, Chairperson, that in our democracy, we accept the fact that whatever that we do, communities must be engaged, because whatever decision that we take, it basically affects their livelihoods and their lives. And therefore, this exercise is quite important. What I would like to indicate, Chairperson, is particularly when it comes to consultations, public engagements, that in this term of this board, we have increased budgetary-wise and also in terms of our human resource-wise in ensuring that we improve more on matters pertaining to awareness, including, of course, community engagement. I must indicate, Chairperson, in all the areas that were affected by our decisions or that are going to be affected by these board decisions, we did have consultations, but they are not enough. And I don't think they will be enough for now until also we do some other things. One, we have raised the matter with the committee and our frustration on the issue of lack of regionalization, if I must call it that, our presence in provinces, that we need to have some kind of skeleton staff in some of the provinces where communities can be able to approach us and have access to us. I must indicate, Chairperson, in this regard, I'm not referring to an office that will take executive decisions or decisions on what delimitations per se, but an operational office where communities and we also can on regular basis be in touch with communities. So the lack of resources has been one key element in ensuring that at least we do regionalize. Given the fact that we are using in most cases the speaker's offices in municipalities, and given the local politics in some of the areas, you might find that one area we could not reach simply because in terms of logistical arrangements, we are using people who might also be involved on those partisan politics in an area. And that is a major weakness to us. In other words, it becomes very difficult for us to take 100% blame on the weakness of reaching out on our communities. And this is quite important, and it is one thing that we really would appreciate the committee to assist us with. Other matters, of course, Chairperson, as you'll see in the slides, they are beyond the control of the board in the sense of communities, as we have been saying. For instance, when we deal with ward delimitations, we would prefer that you use population stats instead of using registered voters and so on. But those, of course, are matters that the committee is well aware of and might also be able to appreciate the limitations on those matters. Obviously, the bill is addressing some of those limitations. With that, Chairperson, I will hand over to the CE, if you allow, Chairperson, to go through the presentation. But more so, I think the discussions, it's where the issues will be coming out, brought by members, and we would be prepared to handle those. I am accompanied here, Chairperson, by the full board, including our senior managers from the Demarcation Board, who also, some, particularly in the management level, have never had an opportunity to be able to engage with the community. This time I'm going to give them an opportunity to be the ones who will respond to the issues that the committee will be raising. With that, Chairperson, if you allow, I would like the CEO to start with the presentation. Thanks very much, Chairperson, members of the committee.
Thanks. Can come in, CEO.
Thank you, Chairperson, Minister, Deputy Ministers, present, members of the Portfolio Committee, my board, Chairperson, Deputy Chairperson, and various board members, and colleagues and protocol observed, as it's usually said. Chair, on slide 2 beamed before you, it's the current compilation of the board. And the person who just spoke with the committees, Mr. Thabo Manyoni, is there. And amongst us here today, we have all the board members who, as indicated by the chair, will take the questions at the end of the presentation. The next slide is just on the outline of the introduction, the constitutional mandate, a legislative mandate, the issues which the committee previously raised, which we were obligated to go and do some research on and respond on, and then there will be the closing remarks. Just on the introduction, Chair, we have the Portfolio Committee. We all know it embarked on a hearing, and during those hearings, there were inputs made to the bill, but equally so, there were concerns raised by the members of the public, which in some instances were responded to by the representation provided by the MDB. And then there were the dissatisfaction about the ward and municipal boundaries in respective areas. The MDB also took note of those matters and prepared itself to provide clarity. Overall, the most common challenge raised was that on participation and consultation. I'm happy to announce that in instances where it was stated that we had not had those public participation, the MDB has full records of all areas that may have been looked at by the PC in the past. The presentation also looked at the 3 areas of having stakeholder relations or stakeholder formal investigations through stakeholder management, and also the other level of public participation. The MDB in its form does acknowledge and sympathize with the communities over and above what has been happening in the past. The constitutional mandate I've touched on, that's on slide number 5. We derive our independence from section 155 of the Constitution. We are guided by the MDA, which is currently being looked at through the IMDA bill, which has now been adopted by the National Assembly and now being processed through the NCOP for its concurrence responsibilities. We're also guided by the MSA. And in terms of the PFMA, the MDB is a Schedule 1 constitutional institution, and our budget is managed and administered through the Department of Copter. and we are obligated to comply with the tenets of the PFMA. Exclusive powers are provided to the board with respect of the demarcation boundaries, delimitation of wards, and municipal capacity assessments. And I wish to indicate that although we're going to touch on the process of having to advertise, the board also has its own full competence to consider the applications without those being provided, but it has not done so in the past 5 years. The legislative mandate is being indicated there as explained, and on slide 5, we touch on the mission, that's the vision of the MDB on spatially transformed, just and sustainable communities. And the mission is there to be read, and the values and the principles. I then jump to slide number 8. It's the matters raised during the IMDA hearings. Those were divided into two. I'm on slide 8. Those were divided into two. They were divided into the ward delimitation process that occurred almost 5 years ago, and the current process of the municipal boundary redetermination. On slide number 9, the issues raised were as follows. The portfolio committee wanted to know the wards covering large geographic areas. There seems to have been a challenge to councillors availing themselves or being within the radius of the areas where matters were raised. The ward criteria does not consider population growth, albeit that we are guided by the technology we use, which is also informed by the stats of South Africa. The ward splitting townships, villages, creating instability within wards. The president of Salga is renowned for saying we divide husband from wife, we divide kitchen from the dining room, and according to our records, we have no such records. So we'll allow that to remain a human element. The MDB should work much closer to the IEC, and who creates voting districts. What criteria does not consider the sparsely populated areas in Northern Cape, and inadequate consultations during what delimitations. Those are the issues which were raised. And in answering those, I read in slide number 10, due to the what delimitation criteria, the use of the norm per ward, sparsely populated areas will have wards with large geographic areas. That has been noted. And this may be resolved by MEC increasing the number of councillors to accommodate the large geographic areas, as we did indicate that we align ourselves with the Municipal Structures Act. The MDB is also required to use certified voters' roll legislation. And just 1 minute, my apology, Chair. The wards may split. Yes, the wards may split the villages due to having to comply with the norm as required by the legislation. And it is encouraging that the current IMDA bill provides for possible deviation from the norm by not more than 30%, of which currently it is 15%. The MDB does, in fact, work with the IEC. Where it does not work with the IEC is where the IEC will be quick to say this is their constitutional independent scope, and therefore we are barred from interfering on that scope. However, there are what we call the interdependence relations, which we honor, and that leads to the success of the two organs of state. The IEC is mandated to create the voting districts, and a question was previously raised on that, and the IEC does normally provide for that, and the chair will explain that. Now, due to the criteria for use of the norm per ward, sparsely populated areas will have wards with large geographic area, and I've already indicated that the bill that is currently before the NCOP addresses that. This is just an illustrative depiction from the map about an example taken from the BCM, sparsely populated area with large wards, densely populated areas having small wards. And it is these maps that actually inform the decision-making by the board, not to sort of take a decision that will not sort of amalgamate those areas properly. In response to several to the issues raised regarding the ward delimitation, the summary is as follows. The MDB commenced its process in 2019. It was just after it's commenced, COVID hit us, and that process was affected by that outbreak. But we, however, completed the exercise by November 2020, just before the lifting of the COVID restrictions happened. The wards were handed over to IEC to start preparing for the local government elections, which was a true success, and nothing was reported in the negative form against the MDB. In quest to enhance the awareness and education regarding the word delimitation, the MDB commenced the word delimitation process, amongst others, by presenting to the many stakeholders like MINMEC, Technical MINMEC, the provincial houses of traditional leaders, the party liaison committees, SALGA, forums, municipal councils, community organizations, all of which were captured in recorded registers and confirmation of success collaborations between those organizations. Now, the MEC is responsible for local government, published the number of councillors in their respective provinces, and thereafter the MDB used the number of councillors calculated as a form of recommendation on number of wards each municipality must have, which at that time was 50% of the number of councillors. The criteria for the word delimitation process in terms of Schedule 1 of MSA, the number of registered votes in each ward, the need to avoid as far as possible the fragmentation of communities, because that's where you find most conflicting situation arising. The object to enhance the participatory democracy in local government is enhanced in the decision-making by the board. The availability and location of suitably located places for the voting and counting are appropriately captured, and taking into consideration, obviously, the following: the communication and accessibility, which is done by various forms, the density of the population, the topography thereof, and the physical characteristics which may hinder what is desired in terms of the vision that the board pushes forward. The number of voters are entitled to vote within the required. The creation of identifiable word boundaries. The MDB embarked also on a process to prepare the draft wards, and these were in consultation with municipal GIS and planning officials. And we know here reference has been made about the use of drone as an enabler to the GIS programming, but not necessarily the absolute decision-making. That decision-making lied with the board. And so far, there have been no legal basis that they are just for consultative purposes, except the politicization that those drones led to certain communities not being consulted. But we are happy to give to the portfolio committee today that in all instances where public consultations were held, records are available for scrutiny and confirmation that indeed those happened. Thereafter, the draft wards were distributed to all municipalities and stakeholders through several communication platforms, the website of the MDB on request, and certain members of the board, including the chairperson, appearing on the print media and other forms of media. We also used newspapers, and those are listed and have been read by members of the committee. The radios are also listed there. And the MDB then commenced with the public participation and the records thereof as kept. And this is an initiative of the MDB. It is not stipulatively provided in the legislation, but in the interest of Ubuntu and consultative processes, the MDB followed that process. Now, when the minister declared the COVID-19 disaster back in 2019, it hindered on consultations. However, 5 provinces were duly concluded. Those were Mpumalanga, KZN, Eastern Cape, Western Cape, Limpopo, Gauteng, with the exception of Ekurhuleni. The program was amended, obviously due to unforeseen circumstances resulted from the COVID-19. But in the end and on time, the final handover of the wards was done to the IEC from August as initially planned to November 2020. That allowed remaining municipalities, mainly the 4 provinces, more time to provide inputs in terms of that process. Now, out of the entire process, a total of 119 public meetings were conducted. 104 of those were regarded as outstanding before the program was suspended. The MDB then arranged the same form that we are seated here today for the other meetings to cover the outstanding 104 municipalities. Municipalities took up the opportunity. They sort of presented their issues in terms of that, and there were no difficulties, but they were able to articulate on the uncertain conditions. Over and above that, during the same period, the MDB took the decision to allow members of the public to also submit written submissions to supplement the public meetings which were arranged by the MDB together with the district municipalities. In this regard, the web-based submission form was also employed. This is just a depiction on the template on the number of areas that were attended to. In total, 4,468 wards, divided in the provincial scope as indicated there, with the KZN in the lead and followed by Limpopo and then Gauteng. And then the number of submissions received is 1,206. The number of submissions rejected back then, 368. The number of submissions accepted out of that total is 838. And the wards reconfigured due to submissions was 1,127. Now, during the submission period, I've already touched on the submissions received, the public meetings and the submission period. The MDB considered all inputs received. None were excluded, and the delimitation criteria and determined words were pronounced. Words were then sort of locked into a document that led to a published provincial gazette, inviting anyone who might have been unhappy about the process followed by the MDB. And obviously the objections were to be captured within a period of 14 days from the date on which the publication was made. Of those, a total of 1,465 objections were received. And on average, 4461 published, 469, 10% of that. Words were configured and were accordingly verified as a result of objections received, and 89% words were confirmed and as published. That marked the end of the delimitation process. However, the MDB continued to avail itself to members of the community. Now, the product in the end looked like the total number of wards. Again, just a summary on that one. The 90% is reflected there and the provincial spread. And again, this 10% is also there for members too. Percentage of wards reconfigured or varied ended up at 9% in terms of the part there. Now, some of the objections and submissions which were rejected, obviously, they did not comply with the norm. They created unnecessary split in voting districts, all of which were explained to those persons of interest and the members of communities. They did not align nor to be considered in terms of their physical features. Some proposing non-contiguous words, unnecessary split of communities, and others affecting municipal boundaries configurations with more wards than those that are determined. Following the outbreak of the COVID-19, the MDB had to respond with agility, obviously, and its traditional mode of face-to-face consultations were also looked at. This was to ensure that despite the disruptions that were recorded on public platforms, pandemic stakeholders were kept abreast of the word delimitation process. Various communication platforms were used, such as WhatsApp, bulk SMS, video clips, adverts, website articles, radio and TV interviews were used to raise awareness. And not once during those times was it raised that there were limitations as a result of that format. Approximately 28 local and national newspapers were utilized, about 25 radio, local and national as well. And the MDB had numerous interviews. Social media platforms were extensively used in that regard. That concludes on the part of the word delimitation. Now, the next 8 slides, I'll run them quickly. It's the current process, which we all know commenced in 2022. However, in 2022, yes, and however, in March of 2023, we had what we call the Section 26 notices. However, the issues raised by the PC, I have to quickly go through those. Traditional authorities had fears that they are likely to be split by the process of MDB and BARC municipal boundaries redetermination. Communities and villages having shorter travel distances to neighboring municipalities and the incidental cost thereon. MDB processes not aligned to IEC, coming again on that one. The relationship between the demarcation and economies of scale needs to be considered. We needed to rectify the apartheid spatial planning, which is aligned to the vision of the MDB. The municipal boundary demarcation should retain use of natural boundaries such as the mountains, rivers, and inadequate consultations were also referred to. Fact is, MDB does consider boundaries of traditional authorities and their role is not a small issue there, it is quite huge. There is also the challenge of unverified traditional authorities, but because we are also part of the MINMAP where the traditional authorities are, regular briefings are made there to ensure that there is that alignment. The demarcation criteria does not consider the movement of people and goods from one point to another. Section 24 and 25 of the MDA refers. The MDA does work. The other party does in fact do that. The MDB does work very closely with the IEC. I've touched on that one. And we do from the capacity assessment considered, not only do we look at the capacity of the affected areas, but the economies of scale are looked into. Our role is to reverse the apartheid spatial distortions and to configure properly in terms of the desired and democratically sort of mapped special places. The municipal boundaries are aligned to roads, rivers, mountains, especially where it is possible and derived from the system or the technological system. And that is where the drones assist us quite a lot. The MDB has also embarked on the education and awareness programs, public meetings, formal investigations, and we acknowledge that further improvements going forward will be made, and we will explain what we call the capacity assessment aftercare program. Now the spread again, 5 years ago, we came in between 3,000 and 4,000 of the views and representation. Because the chairperson and the board went out of their way to go and augment the public notices of March last year, instead of getting just few figures above the 4,000, we came in at 51,223. And that's the provincial spread. With 48 staff members, limited budget, we had to find a way of operating within set timelines to attend to all 51,000 of those. 44,000 came from KZN, 4,000 from Northwest, and the rest is depicted there. But those were the prioritized area, and we managed successfully to work on those. Now, what the board does, it does 4 things actually. It considers the applications which are not even to go forward because they did not meet the criteria, and those are termed declined proposals. Then it moves to the next step of saying, go out and conduct formal investigations with the stakeholders. And out of that, it is either they will then recommend for the determination to be made in terms of those formal investigations, or to then move to the next step of public meeting, or outrightly just ask for public participation meetings, or do both. And that is aligned in terms of those applicable sections in the Act. Now, the decision of the board for demarcation processes to be subjected to public meetings have been communicated with relevant stakeholders in local government, and we all know the circulars 2 and 3, and it is those circulars that lead to members of the public or stakeholders raising the objections within the 30-day period provided. Now, those are the responses that came out of that process. The number of dams to proceed to public meetings came in at 80 with the provincial spread. The number of dams proceed to formal investigations, 114. To proceed to both the public meetings and formal investigations, those were 10. And the spread are indicated so that if members want to go deeper into those, that can be provided. The number of dams not to proceed came in at 17 because they did not qualify in whatever form from the research, from the consideration by the board. And the number of dams to proceed to Section 21 publication came in at a total of 7, and the details are also available. Now, Section 21 notices were published in January. The 30-day period runs from the date on which that publication was made, and both the expiry date of MDB received 541 objections, which objections were processed through our committee, informed by the research. And tomorrow, the board will now consider all those proposals from the committee and make a decision. They may either confirm it, vary, or withdraw the redetermination in terms of Section 21, subsection 5 of the MDO. Chair, this is the last 4 slides. The process post public meetings. After conducting the public meetings and formal investigations, the board would consider all inputs from the research studies, public meetings, investigation hearings, take telephonic calls from affected areas and listen to their motivations, and then determine municipal boundaries in terms of section 21, but we will not do anything outside of the confines of that piece of legislation and its relevant section. Thereafter, the MDB will resolve to redetermine the boundaries of 70 proposals, closed 132, 13 were deferred for further work due to extent and complexity, and those are also listed. Section 21 notices were published. I've touched on that. The board must now consider all objections. The entire municipal redetermination process should be completed by end of this month, which is on Thursday. The MDB is sitting tomorrow. The MDB can then report gladly so, that in this current run, there are no new amalgamations before it. For those who might think certain amalgamations will be made. The summary again, it's the 70 there, with 35 from KZN on proceeding in terms of section 21, not to proceed 132, proposed referrals, that's 13. And we wish to indicate the deferred proposal does not mean it will be in the next run in the next 5 years. The board will still determine the period, but it is within a reasonable time frame. Proposed interventions, it's the review of the MDB founding legislation. Dr. Kevin Naidu is here today. He will touch on that. From our side, we can only confirm that on the 30th of November, the NA, the National Assembly, confirmed the bill to pass to the NCOP for concurrency. And there have been presentations to the select committee, but Dr. Kevin will touch on that. We as MDB will continue to intensify the public and stakeholder education and awareness, and the chairperson touched on the need to establish those satellite offices, noting, of course, that we do work with district councils, but sometimes it does not yield the desired results we want to be felt on the ground. The portfolio committee has repeatedly indicated in the past that we need to be seen on the ground. We need to be engaged on walk-ins on the ground. It is accepted, provided the national department provides the necessary budget, we will be up for it in terms of the program. The MDB through collaboration and partnerships, and those will also be aligned to the capacity assessments, just for the sake of the portfolio committee to understand that after having done the capacity assessment, everything is left to the affected municipalities, the department and SALGA, but there is still that lull, and we believe the MDB must go and play its part in that space. The regionalization has been referred to by the chair, I'm not going to repeat. The concluding remarks are that the queries and dissatisfaction with the ward boundaries have been attended to. There have been complaints, we'll get in touch with those and seek guidance when necessary, but we believe we attended to those. The matters will be raised with the relevant communities. The IMDA, Dr. Naidu will touch on that. The MDB is aware that its current public participation and consultation process require improvement, and plans are afoot to ensure that we do that. I thank you, Chairperson, the Minister and Deputy Ministers and the members of the portfolio committee. Thank you. I don't know whether Chair, the other members would like to add. Chairperson, over to you.
I thought you were saying the DDG, Kevin Naidu, if there's anything you would want to conclude from your presentation, let's take that first.
Yes, good morning, Chairperson, all members of the committee, the leadership of the Demarcation Board, or Deputy Ministers on the call. Chair, perhaps just to report to the committee, and which the committee may be well aware of as well, in that the department, the ministry had briefed the select committee of the NCOP on the 7th of February. The bill was then subsequently referred to provincial legislatures for consultation, as is required in terms of the constitution and in terms of the programming of the select committee. It is expected that on the 8th of March, that committee would then receive the negotiating mandates from the relevant provincial legislatures. So of course, at that point, the department ministry will interact with the committee again to see what has been discussed, received through the various public hearings, etc., with the view to then taking the bill further. That would be the submission from the department, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We then can say if there's anything, Chairperson, that you'd want to add before we allow members to discuss.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, members. I would also want to stress the point that in this period, because some of the frustrations that are coming from communities are the post-amalgamation consequences, if I must call them that. We have done a research, Chairperson, and the limited research is indicating that almost the amalgamations that we have undertaken in the past are not working in the country. Yes, there are a set of reasons why. The main two reasons I will indicate are the response of Treasury to Section 12 reports, where obviously amalgamated municipalities, for instance, will indicate that there is a need to fund matters pertaining to parity, matters pertaining to the property or evaluation roles and so forth. Treasury has not been meeting those requests adequately. And most of the amalgamated municipalities had to suffer the consequences, even today. And two, for unknown practical reasons, in most cases when you amalgamate, you'll find that the previous municipality that has been amalgamated maybe to the larger municipality, all personnel, mostly those that matter to the communities, are then relocated to what then is the head office. And what happens is the remaining previous municipality infrastructure is not utilized adequately. And then communities have to travel long distances going to get services in that so-called headquarters. And in that regard, many frustrations are coming out from communities. And I think members have received those complaints where people are saying now they have to travel long distances and so forth because of the decisions of the Demarcation Board. I'm trying to indicate that, Chairperson, there are factors that need to be addressed if amalgamations have to happen. And in this period that is under review at the moment, the board has decided not to decide on major amalgamations, except of course on minor consolidations when one ward has to move to another municipality and so forth. But major amalgamations, we would really be very averse to take a decision on, given the research that I mentioned earlier from our side. That is one thing that I thought I should raise, Chairperson. But nonetheless, my Chairperson, I still affirm the fact that this engagement is quite important, and we probably would have to recommend that even before some of the processes happen for the next round period of ward delimitations and so on, we have a sort of an engagement like this where we would look into potential weaknesses and be able to get advice from the committee on how we can then proceed as we would be handling them, so that we mitigate the issues that might frustrate the committee and of course, by extension, our work also. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Now it's your turn to engage on the presentation. I see the hand of Honorable Kabanjaba, that's number 1. Honorable Small is number 2. Honorable Buthelezi, number 3. Can we follow that order, Honorable Kabanjaba?
Thank you, Chair, but I see my gadget, Chairperson, doesn't allow me to open the what you call the screen. I don't know what is happening in your side, Chair. The person who conducting this.
But we can hear you. We can hear you. Let's
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Oh yeah, it's fine now. Thank you, Chair. Greeting to the leadership. To save time, I can say all protocol observes. Chairperson, let me welcome the presentation from the Demarcation Board. And thanks for the chairperson of the board, Honorable Manyoni, to outline in his opening remarks, Chair, about the work of the board. And also telling us that they cannot work properly with a community public participation because of the lack of resources, which is a major issue in this board. The country is bigger, Chair, but when the country is bigger, it needed more resources for them to touch corner to corner of the country. So, but that thing cannot stop me to ask question, Chair. But I saw the problem, but I'll ask also the question. Chairperson, when we were conducting our public hearing on the Independent Municipal Demarcation Authority Bill, Chair, there were some specific concern in some of the community. There were concerns, especially in the Eastern Cape, around ward demarcation that resulted in a mixing of urban and village citizens. And Chair, so in doing so, Chair, it makes this a citizen to clash or fight between the urban and the villages, because, Chairperson, my understanding, the citizens of the villages, they are not used to pay resource services, Chair. They used to get free services, but while these urban, they used to pay services. They understand that the services must be paid. These villages is because they are entitled to the indigenous, Chair, from under the municipalities. So that is why they have that misunderstanding to each other. And also, Chair, it's a similar sentiment with the Limpopo and Mosina, where the integration of rural and urban residents, it happened to fight each other also. when we were there in Limpopo, people were crying that those who are in urban area, they are paying resources, but those who are from rural area, they are not paying resources. Chairperson, my question to the Demarcation Board, what is the solution they have to make sure that these citizens, they are not being integrated, because they are not the same, Chair. Also, Chairperson, in JP Marks in Northwest, most speakers were preoccupied with the amalgamation of the Ventersdorp and the Potchefstroom local municipalities to form the JP Marks local municipality, and the need for this to be reversed. Potchefstroom residents were reportedly subsidizing the poor Ventersdorp and the latter's residents were compelled to travel all the way to Potchefstroom. Chairperson, I hear the chair outlining about this, which means they know about this issue of residents traveling for the long time from the point A to point B, which is not good. I can hear when the chair outlined, but my question is that what is the measure they will put in place to make sure that this community, they won't travel this long way to point A to point B, because it affects their lives. Communities are not working, Chair. There is no money. As the board doesn't have the money to do the thorough public participation in the whole country, which means the community is the same. And also, Chair, in Thulamela, Limpopo, demand was the call for the reversal of the Mutala local municipalities in cooperation into the Thulamela local municipality. The measure was allegedly done improperly, as the community was not consulted and the expected benefit have not materialized to the community, which means I can go back to the chairperson when was opening remarks about it, their problem also as a board. But Chair, maybe the board can tell us what will done to make sure that these issues and complaints, they are resolved without any fighting from the community. If they can give us some, what the measures they are putting in place for them to make sure that they resolve all this question and crying of the people, so that when we go back, Chair, to conduct another, if we will be coming back as members, because this year is our end of term. If we will be coming back, or also those who will be coming back, when they go back to the community and hear whether their complaints were resolved, they will find that their complaint has resolved, Chairperson. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Smale. Thank you, Chair. I was just unmuting myself. And Chair, let me just start with the last remarks by the department or the board with information of various municipalities. And I think the problem lies with Section 12 notices of municipalities in line with the Municipal Structures Act, which normally requires the relevant MEC to give concurrence in that regard. And this is very critical, and I think it's the enforcing of amalgamation of, let's call it Section 21 notices onto society, onto local municipalities, brings about a unwanted or possible unauthorized expenditure by various municipality, by which means the grading of the municipality starts changing. Those boundaries, those affected municipalities are being amalgamated into 3 different municipalities at some points. And the various stages of that specific municipality Spluma Act of 2013, which forces certain obligations or certain financial obligations or type of support that which gives towards municipalities. So my question is to the board, the amendment of possibly looking or the strengthening of regulations, or be the act when we looked at these Section 21 notices. Is there maybe a time or a need that one looks at it? And that talks to your research document. And if there is a need, Chairperson, I would very much argue that the research document that the board has done should be made public to the committee, so that we actually start looking at it. The section 21 notices, especially with the 13 deferred decisions, and more so some of those in some very highly contested provinces like the Free State, taking into account our timeline of the 2024 election schedule, which is the 29th of May. Is the board foreseeing to finalize those notices now before, or is it something that, due to its complexity and possible objections of that nature, that it is something that the board would maybe only consider after the 2029 elections? Notices of these Section 12 or 21 notices. What the previous member spoke about, and the disparatives between urban and rural municipalities, and the greater need for some sort of concurrence by either the MEC or by National Treasury cannot be overemphasized, Chairperson, because it speaks directly to equitable shares. It talks directly to a phased-in approach, because in many cases, like what happened in Limpopo province, where certain areas received free services from that respective municipality, and suddenly they've got to start paying for a service. And therefore, the amalgamation of that municipality cannot just be enforced on a community, not taking into consideration some sort of strong recommendations by that. So even if the board writes to National Treasury enlightening them, the enforcement cannot be a one-sided approach. It's got to wait for the function of National Treasury. And my question would be, what are we doing to make sure that we are having concurrence on a national level, concurrence on a provincial level? And I'm saying this because just last week we were dealing with Enoch Majima municipality that finds itself into a space where a Section 12 notice have not been issued by the relevant provincial authority, and that respective municipality has now unauthorized expenditure in the billions due to that staff component going to court against one government department, taking another government department going to court due to the sort of amalgamation, but not allowing for concurrence. And these are the I would say the objectives or the issues that this committee is trying to avoid. So, direct question to the board: how are we going into the future? Because I just heard the comment that we are not going to look at these issues going forward. How are we then firmly going to look at these issues and making sure that that functions are going to start following financial support, and that functions are going to follow provincial and to align those? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Buthelezi.
Thank you, Chairperson. In the past, we've discovered that the number of votes in wards is boosted by having hundreds of people registered to one address, which essentially constitutes voter fraud, as it will falsely increase the population within that within voting districts. So I would like to know how they've worked with the IEC to ensure that this practice is curbed during this upcoming election. And then on a point of clarity concerning slide 18, I would just like to know the process that is followed to determine the number of wards for reconfiguration based on submissions. For example, in KwaZulu-Natal, it is listed that you received 152 submissions, of which 91 were accepted. How do you then determine that 301 wards should be reconfigured? Thank you, Chairperson.
You, Honorable Direko.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Chair. Greetings to everyone who's here. Chair, I only have two questions. When we were in Northwest, there were issues that were raised by community, and fortunately, the CEO of the Demarcation Board was there, and then he assured the committee and the community that he will conduct and establish fact-finding mission and then revert back to them. So I just want to check with the CEO, how far is he in terms of responding to the issues of that particular community in Northwest. Secondly, Chair, it's about the disputes that are raised after the demarcation process. I would like to check with the board as to how long does it take for them to respond to the dispute. And I know with the new bill, there is a recommendation for effectiveness of dealing with the dispute. But currently, I would like to check with them how is the process and how long does it take. The reason why I'm asking is that in some municipality you'll you'll demarcate municipalities, and at the end of the day, you'll get allegations from the community that there was no proper consultation, it was done improperly. And the last issue, Chair, is that with the new bill, there's a provision for performing assessment in terms of viability of amalgamated municipalities. Previously, I'm not sure. And my question is also in line with what other previous members have just said. Like, for instance, in Free State, there's an area by the name of Flay, which was taken out of which was taken out of Masidonyana municipality to Mangaung Metro. And after some time, you then realize that the rates and taxes and municipal services in that particular area, because it's a metro, have doubled their prices compared to where they are. And that area is a very poor area. So you realize that the community members are now starting to complain. They're now starting to raise issues about the amalgamation of that particular metro municipality. So I just want to check that, is there any assessment done before you can demarcate, and how effective it is? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The last speaker is Honorable Mpumza.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, because I think I have a problem of network. Can I be allowed not to open up my camera?
Yeah, yes.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning to you, Chair members. The DMs and the senior officials in the Department of Cooperative, the chairperson of the Demarcation Board and members of the board and the CEO. Mine, Chair, is that the chair of the board has actually clarified the fact that the concern around the question of consultation, engagement, and the awareness that the board has undertaken is that indeed it would have to suffer some certain limitations, given that the country is so broad with 9 provinces where there is no regional footprint. Critical to this, the limitation would arise from the fact that you do not have even satellite offices in these provinces, wherein communities would actually visit and engage. This was reflected during the public hearings of the fact that in all these provinces, we could not be identified, despite that we're introducing themselves, but we're seen on the main as the Demarcation Board. Hence, the majority of the discussions was around the question of the demarcation process, more than responding to the bill itself, although they actually contributed. But on the main, they were actually raising their lived experiences, and the fact that we could delineate that they do not differentiate between us and the Demarcation Board. This arises from the fact that the board doesn't have a footprint in the provinces. And I would like to understand why there is no innovative way of ensuring that there is some form of a satellite office, whether or a person in a municipality in the office of the speaker, when then we could not have an office on ourselves. And also understand too that the CEO has indicated that the limited budget does not allow you to establish a regional footprint. And I would understand what is it that is actually constraining the department in actually providing that budget, because it is a limited budget for satellite offices. Why is this matter long outstanding? We have raised this matter, we have been raising it, and we have debated in all our engagement with the Demarcation Board. What is it that is holding back the department in providing this necessary resource to ensure that the board has a footprint in the provinces, so that communities could actually engage it by physically walking into their own offices. Secondly, Chair, the fact that the board, the chair and the CEO are indicating that in this current phase, the issue of amalgamation is a matter that will not arise. Can I understand better? Because also piggybacking on the question raised by Honorable Dignity, that in Northwest, this matter was raised and the CEO, we had to defend the CEO in an angry community. Because on the main, the communities were very, there's a lot of animosity between the residents of the two cities around the question of paying for services and all that thing. The point is that the commitment that the CEO has made, has this been undertaken as raised by Honorable Tigret? Is similarly also in Pulwane. You could see that the relation between the amalgamated municipality Musina and Thulamela, relations are so bad that communities were choosing each other because Musina, they were very bold to say, we don't want these people because they're not paying rates and services. And you could see that this matter, it had to be ameliorated somewhere so that we have good relations between those communities. What would be the position then that amalgamation is a matter that is now no longer on the map? The demarcated municipalities would remain in the same form. That is my question. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. That is the end of the questions for now. Can I revert back to you, Chairperson, and the board?
Thank you, Chairperson. Members of the Portfolio Committee. Yes, Chairperson, we have heard the questions and need for clarity on most of the issues. Let me attempt to answer on some of the issues. I hear that there's an echo, I hope. Okay. Thanks, Chairperson. Chairperson, Taba Nchaba has indicated that there have been unintended consequences on ward delimitations, particularly in the Eastern Cape. Giving an example of a poor area with a sort of fairly affluent area being brought together as one ward, and members indicating that if they are within an area where some people are not expected to be paying for services and they are paying services, they also would rather not pay services. Of course, that's the unintended consequences of the ward delimitation process. Simply because, Chairperson, when we do the ward delimitation, we are considering the formula as presented by the minister. And there, mainly, we are looking into this in terms of preparing for local government elections. But yes, of course, ultimately, this is the unintended consequence that we are found with. Now, this is quite a difficult issue, Chairperson. One, even the constitution of the country acknowledges what I would term cross-subsidization, that the poor communities, you can't put them as one pocket, and the affluent communities put them as one pocket. And how then one mitigates this it's not only a technical issue. I think it is an issue also that goes into the heart of the Constitution and also related legislation in this regard. But to us, what then it means is we would need to look into these matters when the processes are unfolding again for the next coming local government elections, and maybe have discussions with the relevant authorities, particularly your provincial departments of Cooperative in those areas that might be affected in such a manner, and be able to say how they would then deal with the after effects of the ward delimitation processes. But the unfortunate part is when we are handling these processes of ward delimitation, we are not looking into who's poor and who's rich and who can afford and who cannot afford. We are basically working on the formula provided by the minister, which we all know it is a formula that is trying to, if I may use the word, to bring some kind of equity in terms of the number of voters in an area, instead of having one voting station, having all people voting into and other voting districts having no people to vote for. Mainly, here we are guided by and for provisions for elections and not on these unintended consequences that are arising. Yes, we also have raised the issue earlier in a different form, as you are indicating on JB Max. And of course, the distances now people have to travel simply because the former municipality offices are no more providing the services as they used to. You were referring to Potchefstroom in this regard. People having to go now to the center for most of the services. Of course, this is out of the control of the Demarcation Board. But these are lessons that we have learned, that the unintended consequences follow in this particular fashion. Hence, the board has taken a decision that in this term, it is not going to come and decide on major amalgamations, as I indicated earlier. Ours, as we have contemplated in the board, is also to have an aftercare where we will be going to some of these affected municipalities to address these issues that have been brought to our attention and be able to work with municipalities in ensuring that at least adequate services are given in those areas. And Tata Small has also asked questions on the issues of deferred cases, Section 21 and so forth. Yes, I must indicate to the committee that given the complexity of the matters that we are dealing with when it comes to those cases, that's why they have been deferred. But our intention, Chairperson, and the committee is that these deferred cases have to be finalized before your coming local government elections, so that a finality is brought in, and when we prepare for those local government elections, we know exactly where we stand on those cases. But they would not be finalized within this short period of before your May election period. I am, obviously it might not be exact, but I'm looking into a period of almost 12 months where we will be looking into the researches, doing those investigations to be able to come to a finality on these matters. But the intention of this board is to make sure that at least come local government elections, those matters would have been finalized. And also, I'm not responding to Ume Buthelezi, I'm not responding to Hatziriaka Medireko. I will also come to, also try to make an input to Babu Kumza on issues of how then do we handle this issue that we have been bringing to the attention of the committee. And I hope that when the committee writes its final report, it will also highlight this plight pertaining to the issue of at least having some satellite offices in provinces. Unfortunately, given the nature of our work, it becomes very difficult even if we might assign some of our officials into offices of certain municipalities, districts, when it comes to their offices of their speakers, in the sense that we might compromise the independence of the board. So those options of trying to work with other institutions in provinces, to us, it might not work simply because of the independence of the board that we have to safeguard. So the only option that we have is to have independent offices in those provinces to handle these matters. Yes, amalgamations we have indicated we would not be handling in this term. And of course, I must indicate, members, there have been applications, like from your JB Max and other areas, to revisit the previous decisions that the board has taken on amalgamations. Whether the board will agree with the proposals or not is a matter that obviously I can't put on record in this meeting, but it is part of those matters that we are doing an investigation on. Hence, they are part of the deferred cases. We have a list of those applications, proposals that we have received in this regard, if the committee would want to have that list. I will hand over to the CEO and other members of the board who might also have inputs to make in addressing some of the issues that have been raised by the committee. Chairperson, thanks. I'm handing over to the CEO.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee members. Mine is just the two areas. September the 28th last year, a board member, Batekekesi, led a formal investigation on the Ventersdorp Potchefstroom dispute, and those were properly articulated and referred to the board. And what then happened, because of the complexity of the matter, the board resolved that there is no sufficient information available to allow for a final and sustainable decision to be taken, and therefore it requires further research, consultation, and or stakeholders engagement. So that's part of the deferred cases the chair referred to, which will be looked into within the next 12 days. How long does it take to resolve a dispute and reasons? Well, it depends on the complexity. But at the MDB, we have a strict route form policy where we abide by the timelines, and we have not failed on those. So I think, but the research that is done is necessary to do that. The other question was whether or not we can release the research material that is currently done. The management is here. They will analyze the portions which will be released for the portfolio committee to then look at. Chair, those are just the budget issue. We have, in essence, motivated for for the establishment of those satellite offices, and that part we leave to the department. But of course, there will be those consultations between us and the department and National Treasury, and will be guided clearly by that process. Chair, those are the few questions, but however, as indicated by the chair, there may be board members who would like to add in terms of what is there. I just needed to check that. Oh, Ali would also want to add on few technical issues from management, and then we'll transfer over to the board members to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and all members of the committee and members of the Municipal Demarcation Board. I am going to attend to a question by, I think it was Honorable Direko, which is also about process, and Honorable Buthelezi about process as well. I think the question was about the process that we follow to determine the number of wards. I think as part of the presentation by the CEO, the number of wards, it's linked pretty much with the number of councillors that the MEC determines before we start with the ward delimitation process. In essence, it starts with the formula that the chairperson was speaking about, which is published by the minister. This is the formula for determining the number of councillors. So as soon as the minister has determined the number of the formula, then the MECs will take that formula and determine the number of councillors for all the municipalities in their respective provinces. What the Municipal Demarcation Board does thereafter, it just takes the number of councillors determined by the MEC in each of those municipalities, and in essence, in terms of the law, just divide it by 2. Then it will give you the number of wards a municipality should have. And immediately thereafter, then we will go and determine the boundaries of the wards as configured. In other words, if the MEC says Buffalo City should have 50 wards, 15 councillors, it tells the MDB that Buffalo City will have, if it's 100 councillors, then the MDB should determine 50 wards for Buffalo City. So it's just 50% as provided for in terms of the Act. And thereafter, we will start with the process to delimit wards. And there was a question about how do you then determine, I think the question arose because of the slide that we presented, some of the submissions which were accepted and some of those that were not accepted. So in this instance, if a submission comes and in some instances, I think there's a slide that explains what are some of the reasons the submissions may be rejected. For example, somebody may write to us and say, I want an extra ward in a municipality. Obviously, with the process that I just explained, you can already tell that the MDB has got no authority to increase the number of wards because it's a process that follows each other. So there's no, in that instance, we will reject that proposal. In some cases, people will propose a ward, which after doing the calculations in terms of the number of registered voters, configuring and putting together the voting districts, you'll find that it goes above the norm that the chairperson was speaking about. So the board would not accept a ward that is, let me do it this way. In terms of the Act, the board can deviate from the average number of registered voters that's allowed in a ward in a municipality by not more than 15%. So upwards, it's 15%, below it's 15%. So if a submission comes, and after we've done the analysis and the configurations, we realize that the proposal is either below the minimum or above the maximum. There's no way that the board will accept that proposal. So that's how we would determine which submissions will go through and which ones will not. And in some instances, of course, there might be a feasible, a river or a road or a highway or a mountain on which the board would think it will make a proper boundary. So in those instances, the board may also reject that proposal on account of the fact that wherever the proposal is going, it will result in a confusing boundary for those areas. So those are some of the things. An interesting take by Honorable Smale, I think, on the proposals when he asked, what would we do especially after demarcations? I think it's important that as the board, we had thought of looking at the process after, which the chairperson spoke of the aftercare. It's a process where after we have finalized the boundaries in terms of section 21.5, then the board sends the details to the MECs and the Minister of Finance. These two are charged with the responsibility to determine the date of effect. I think probably over the years we've missed an opportunity where these two stakeholders would apply their minds in terms of whether there's transitional arrangements will be finalized within what particular period, are there reasonable funding to support these new entities, and then they will determine a feasible date of effect, which we have never applied. But also perhaps as time goes on, we may look at in instances where the MDB may want to redetermine a boundary. I know that Honorable Smale used the word concurrence. During our process, because some of these are stakeholders themselves, which we have to consult in terms of the law, of course, we may seek concurrence from them within the process. However, I think it's also feasible for them to do an analysis and give the MDB inputs that will assist in terms of whether, if this decision was to be taken, are we likely to have a feasible or a functional municipality or not? So I think it's an important injunction that we may want to explore going forward. I think, okay, is there any assessment done before demarcation is finalized? Yes, we do, but we have since learned that, as the chairperson has indicated, in most instances, especially with the complicated amalgamations and sometimes de-amalgamations, that they are so complex that your process may not have foreseen some of the consequences of those particular redeterminations. As we are sitting with a number of amalgamations that we surely know by now that they are not working, some of the consequences that came because of those decisions, I don't think some of them were foreseen. For example, in our research, we have also seen that some of the causes why some of these municipalities are not functioning properly, over and above the transitional arrangements and the funding and all that, it's probably the transitional period itself, which in our view, we think it might have been done too quickly, to an extent that you may want to support municipalities from establishment until at least they get to a phase where they are sustainable, instead of just hoping that all is going to be well. I think we've learned now that it doesn't work like that. So that requires a much more integrated approach between all the different stakeholders, between the MDB, the MECs for support, and all the related departments and the municipalities that are affected on the ground. Yeah, I think the only other question that I didn't talk to is what is constraining the department?
Thank you very much. If I could just deal with one question, which in my view, we are not the competent authority to deal with. I think IEC will be better positioned, and that is why would you have 100 people or voters registered in one address. But I'll try to provide what I think is a context so that it is understood. But like I'm saying, it is important to emphasize that IEC would better be in a position to reply. Safe to say that on the one extreme, there's a possibility that it could be a function of fraud. But as far as spatial conversation is concerned, this to a large extent may be caused by what we, the board at this stage and moving forward, will be trying to grapple with, which is the alignment between what we do and the Demarcation Board and in an attempt to work together with other entities responsible for National Spatial Development Framework, Integrated Urban Development Framework. There was another honorable member who made reference to Bloom. And I'll give an example of why that could be possible, particularly in the context of cities. I may not know much about other areas. Let me give an example about where I stay in Durban. You find a lot of young people staying in the outskirts of Durban, including the townships, but work opportunities are far removed from where they stay on a daily basis. So for the lack of a better word, let's call it squatting. Squatting is commonplace now in the cities. A flat that is meant to accommodate 2, 3, 4 people. You end up finding so many people staying in one flat precisely because of how all of us have been approaching the question of spatial justice and transformation. That there are certain things which cannot necessarily be resolved by just throwing and rethrowing of boundaries. That's why it is important that we said moving forward, we will need to work deliberately with other entities responsible for the broader concept and practice of spatial justice and transformation, so that as and when you draw boundaries and try to create livable spaces, you also address other issues that have got direct impact on the migration of people. Because for as long as there's little that is being done in service delivery, in terms of access to economic opportunities in your outer areas of the cities, people will continue to migrate and be over concentrated within inner city space as a result of these challenges. And I suspect that could be one of the matters that may lead to either one had suspected fraud, but outside fraud, it's possible that you could have so many people using one address to register to vote because of these other issues, which indeed are outside the capacity and the scope of what the Demarcation Board can do. Thank you very much.
Good morning to honorable committee members. I would like to expand on the question. I think it was asked by Honorable Dereku regarding dispute resolution. I know the chairperson tried to respond to that question and the CEO, but I think they responded in as far as disputes relating to before the Demarcation Board make decisions. The main issue in terms of dispute resolution arises once the board has made a final decision in terms of Section 21, subsection 4, which is either to confirm, to vary, or to withdraw a determination. And once this has been published in the Government Gazette, the problem is that the board becomes functus officio, and therefore that leads to litigation. And the portfolio committee will recall that in as far back as 2012, there was a task team, a ministerial task team that was established, and it was led by Mempo Mimpofu. Among the recommendations that were made then in 2012-2013 was the speedy resolution of the final decisions of the board, considering that once the board has made the decision, it cannot do anything. And hence there's been a call for the establishment of the appeals tribunal, because we know that litigation is expensive, it's time consuming, and it is also a waste of money on the part of the board, let alone the fact that some communities are unable to access justice based on funds or resources. The same call was made in the conference outcome report of the former board, which was held in 2016. And I think we are going somewhere, because in terms of the bill, we are seeing the existence and the continuous mention of the appeals tribunal so that it can assist with speedy resolution of disputes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just for record, the first speaker was Aluwanu Ramakatsa, the COO, followed by Dr. Mohali, the board member, and Memoki, also the board member. And also a slip of a tongue on my part. On deferment, when I said 12 days, I intended to concur with the chair that it will be within 12 months. Chair, those are the responses provided by us. If there's a second bite on questions, those may be allowed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I don't seem to see any hands. Oh, I see one that want to follow up. Honorable Smale.
Thank you, Chairperson. And just because maybe this of the slide or the 13 deferred cases didn't make reference to some of the issues, but one of the issues that I've taken note of that might be a difficult issue to deal with is the Maluti Pufong municipalities within the Free State. Are those two part of the 13 deferred cases? Just as simple, I don't have got to go into a record. If they're not part of the 13 cases, deferred cases, an explanation to where they are within the process of that, if I may ask a direct question in that regard, Chairperson.
Okay. Any other hand? It looks like there's none for now. In fact, that direct question, Chairperson, will also allow you space to make concluding remarks. And if you can deal with it, or if there's anybody else, then that person must deal with that, and then you make your closing remarks.
Thank you, Chairperson and members. If I did, Chairperson, get the question right, it is referring to the so-called Harrismith case, the Maluti issue. I must indicate that case is one of the deferred cases of which we are still doing an investigation and research on. Yes, Chairperson, I would say in the affirmative. It's one case that we are dealing with in the Free State. But Chairperson, when it comes to my concluding remarks, I would say, I sort of hinted earlier, in the next round of these processes, both the ward delimitation, including, of course, the redetermination of municipal boundaries, because we all the time issue circulars on our program. I will recommend that when we issue those circulars on the program that we'll be following, we should have in the portfolio committee schedule a slot before the processes happen so that we can then be able to share some of the ideas that the members might be having and also highlight on areas that might be of importance. We normally people call them hotspots and so on, and see how those areas should be approached and handled. Of course, at the end of the day, the demarcation board has to do its work independently. But I think it is proper for us because the main objective is ultimately to have communities that are satisfied, that feel that they've been consulted on issues that are affecting their lives. And it is important that we then have those slots even before we start commencing with some of the work that we will be handling in the next sessions that will be following. Thanks, Chairperson. I don't have much except that.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and members of the board. and the department. The sharing of information, responding to some of the questions raised by members. It makes us wiser after the meeting. So I would like to first thank the board members, this full house of attendance, and we're hearing voices from all the board members, and I think out of it, the committee is slightly wiser than when we started. Thank you to members as well for attending and the officials. The meeting is officially closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.